Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Focus Friday here on August the 18th. Well, it's certainly nice to get back into the field after a week of vacation with family and friends at the county fair. This week on our episode, I want to talk a little bit about an update on tar spot. We've come a long ways in 2 weeks. Also, taking a look at sudden death syndrome and how we really can tell that difference between that and brown stem right out there. And finally, a little discussion on white mold this year. We're seeing quite a bit of that out in fields over the last week or two. So jumping right into this tar spot update. We are officially at 17 counties in the state of Michigan that are showing tar spot symptomology out in those fields. And truly, the wet weather we've had lately has been extremely conducive for getting that to continue to grow and brew and develop in that canopy. If you are out scouting, and I hope you are, keep in mind that most of those lesions are going to be found in the lower part of the canopy still this time of the year. And so below that ear leaf be the best chance of finding tar spot, and continue to look for that. And certainly putting a fungicide out there is still a viable option right now, especially if we are seeing lesions on those leaves. Now, another week or two, it might be another story, but we all remember how bad it was just a couple of years ago. And not only yield loss, but concerns of loss of standability means that we've got to stay vigilant in keeping our eye on tar spot out there. For those folks that did spray back at R1, we're going to get close here to that 21 to 28 days of residual that we see on some of those good fungicides out there, and it may be time to start scouting those fields again for a possible second application if the disease continues to get worse and conditions remain the same. So be vigilant, and we're going to keep our eye on this one again this year. Next, on the soybean side of things, we are seeing the very unique symptomology of sudden death syndrome or brown stem rot because the foliar symptoms on both of those diseases are exactly the same and very unique. So you're going to see bright green veins sticking out on those leaves and a yellow to brown or dead material between those veins. And the only way we can tell the difference between SDS and BSR is by taking and splitting that stem open and looking at the center vein inside those stems. So I like to split that stem, usually starting an inch or two above where the soil line would be, and splitting that right down the center to a point that's below by a couple inches that soil surface. And then what you're going to find inside, if this is sudden death syndrome, that very center vein will continue to be white in color and look very healthy. The woody tissue on either side of it actually oftentimes will get almost a grayish cast to it. And you can sometimes also find some blue mold on the roots themselves in cases of sudden death syndrome. And that's actually the fusarium you're seeing out there that is the causal agent for sudden death syndrome. And it's out there pretty bad depending on the varieties, and it is very varietal dependent. Some varieties just have a much better natural tolerance to others. The other thing about sudden death, of course, is there tends to be a relationship with that and soybean cyst nematodes. And so if you think about that process, as the cyst nematodes feed on those roots and then die, they leave an opening in that root. And that opening is where that fusarium can enter into that to move up the plant and give us those foliar symptoms and start to really kill that plant back. And of course, then we see huge reductions in yields potentially because of not only reduced soybean numbers, but also it's hard to get the size on those soybeans when we're not producing the energy we need for those plants. As far as if we see inside those split stems where that vein is brown, then we're talking brown stem rot. And the reason we want to be able to differentiate between these two is because our management is different. Now, certainly in both cases, we want to do a really good job of varietal selection, but we need to select a variety that is either tolerant to brown stem rot or to sudden death, depending on the history and the problem we have in that particular field. It is, if we think about management for brown stem rot specifically, tillage and crop rotation both can help in addition to varietal selection, but you probably need to rotate out 2 or 3 years to really get some advantage on that. As far as for sudden death, seed treatments, we've got some really good seed treatments out there to help with the management of sudden death, and then varietal selection and managing those cysts the best we can. So certainly get with your seed rep or myself as your agronomist here, and be happy to talk through some of those specifics on what seed treatments to be looking at and what varieties to be looking at as well for next year. Unfortunately, in many cases like that, there is no rescue treatment options available. So it's all about managing this for years to come. Falling in that same category, unfortunately, is also sclerotinia white mold. And this has been the perfect year for seeing white mold issues, and it's really starting to pop its head up right now. Now, from an agronomist perspective, it's actually a great year for me to be able to evaluate different varieties out there for their tolerance levels. We don't get a chance to do that every year, but certainly for those folks that are dealing with the white mold, yields are always going to be reduced and greatly reduced in those cases where we set in white mold this early. When we think about managing white mold for next year, and certainly don't see it every year, but we know those fields that we need to manage almost perennially to help with white mold. We need to think about all the aspects of that disease triangle. And so the susceptible host, well, soybeans are susceptible, some more than others. And we've got some really good varieties for white mold tolerance out there that we can help you with, and some certainly to avoid at the same time. As far as the presence of the disease out there, that sclerotia, it's a little more difficult to manage out there. There are some products out there that have some claims for that, certainly that you may want to be trying and looking at. But the one thing we can't control, unfortunately, is the environment. And who'd have thunk that when we started with such a dry early spring that we'd ever be talking white mold this time of the year. But we've had that late moisture. We've had the perfect conditions for bringing white mold. So how do we change the environment? We don't change the weather patterns, but we can certainly keep our rows wide, 30-inch rows. We can reduce our populations, try to get some air in that canopy. And then making sure that if we have those problematic fields that we're using some of those fungicides very specific for management of white mold in soybeans. And there's some pretty good ones out there, but it's all about the timing. And I've gotten a couple questions already this week of, I'm seeing white mold out there. What can I do now? And unfortunately, it truly is too late for this year's crop and managing that. And putting those fungicides on this late. So best we can do is do our best to plan and try to keep that out of our fields in future years, and knowing those fields that have high levels of pressure to concentrate on in the future. So with that, certainly been great to be back in the field, and looking forward to harvest and continuing to evaluate these products in the field. If you have any questions, as always, give me a call. This is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Focus Friday.